Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie Lau. This is Empower Your Mindset. The series was created to help people transform fear into more joy, peace, and healing. Today's guest is the wonderful Guy Finley. Guy is the best-selling author of over 35 or 45 books actually on self-realization, including The Secret of Letting Go, and his latest relationship magic, Waking Up Together. And he's the founder and director of Life of Learning Foundation in Southern Oregon. Thank you so much for being here, Guy. And I would love to hear more about how you got started on your journey of self-realization and what inspired you.
Nice to see you. Nice to be with you, Stephanie. And I'm delighted to share whatever I'm able to share with you and the people that are joining us. I would be lying if I said I knew why my life turned out the way that it did. From an early age, that's the best I can tell you. I just had a sort of a double-sided insight. One was the world didn't make sense to me.
Mm.
Even at the age of 6 or 7 years old, it just didn't make sense to me. My parents, the world I grew up in a very successful family. I had everything that a child could possibly want, and yet I was surrounded by what I didn't know the word for it in those days, but I knew something was wrong. People were dysfunctional. There was fear and anxiety and anger that just didn't make sense to my young mind. So that there was that side of it. And then the other side of it is that from a very early age, I had a spiritual bent. From the 6, 7 years old, I started being interested in spiritual things. So between the world that I could see was not the world that I liked or that was for me, and the fact that I was already bent towards looking for something that was of a slightly higher order, that's how it all began, and it just unfolded from there over time.
Mm. That's beautiful, like how you always had this inkling that you could see from the outside something that wasn't exactly working. And I'm wondering, as you went through your life and you noticed different challenges and things that didn't necessarily feel so great, how did you adjust yourself to acclimate to these different situations?
See, that's really the kind of the pivot stone right there, Stephanie. I didn't acclimate myself. I didn't want to acclimate myself. Somehow, innately, I knew, which was, when I look back on it, it's fairly unusual. Most of us are acclimated to living with fear.
Hmm.
We're acclimated to lying, to fawning in front of others. We're acclimated to compromising ourselves so that we can get what the world promises is going to fulfill us and perfect us. But I knew back then, as I certainly do now, that you make a deal with fear in this life, and fear will own you throughout this life, and you'll never know that you gave away the greatest possibility any human being could have, which is to discover that there is something in us that is not just fearless, but that is intended to lead us into a relationship with it so that we're no longer afraid of what people think or what may happen or my health, my mortality, you name it. So that point at a, and I think everybody meets it. I think everybody realizes, I keep compromising myself in order to console myself and find some kind of comfort that stays with me, but it doesn't. And at a certain point, at least it was for me, I said, okay, I'm not going to go down that road. I'm not going to do it. I don't care what happens to me. I'm going to find out if there's another kind of life. That was what I did.
Mm. I think what you said is really insightful, how we don't necessarily have to compromise who we are and actually look for another type of way of being and living. And what exactly, could you elaborate more on that and speak into what you found on your
Yeah,
journeys?
yeah, I can. Again, because of the world that I was born into. My father was Time Magazine Man of the Year. My friends growing up were the children of the biggest celebrities of the day. So that's who I ran with as a kid. But there was this, I now call it a divine dissatisfaction. At a certain point, I think, I hope, a person recognizes if this world was going to give me what it is that I need in my heart of hearts to be whole and happy, if it was out there, God, by now I would have certainly found it. I mean, how many things do you have to do and go through and own and then find out you were owned by what you thought you possessed? I mean, how many repetitious relationships do you go through like that before you realize there's something fundamentally amiss here? And for me, that was the whole tale, is that I was born into a world where I was given everything, told I had everything, and yet it was evident to me that I didn't. And if I didn't have it there, then I had to look for it in places that I didn't know. So my life became a journey of moving through the fear of what is unknown, as opposed to the confidence or certainty of compromising and keeping what is known in my life, hoping that someday it's going to change and then suddenly I'm going to be free. It doesn't happen that way. There's no freedom in the known. It's impossible. It's impossible.
Mm. Right. And so instead of just staying comfortable and, going with what everyone else is doing, you really created a space for yourself for discovery and that place to be uncomfortable. I'm curious how you navigate that feeling of, going outside of that boundary of what you knew and, what does that look like and how can we cultivate that courage within ourselves?
See, if I have made any even partial illusion that I somehow or other was this, I did this and I did that and I parted ways. If I did that, that was all wrong. I have a saying many, many years later now, and the saying is that if you look up at the gates of heaven or nirvana or whatever you want to call this higher kingdom, you don't see footprints walking in through that gate. You see heel marks where people were dragged through, because that's how it works. It's always
Mm,
God, like Christ said, not my will, but thy will be done. I don't want to do this. I have no interest at all in setting myself apart from other people because I want to be loved. I want to belong. I want to have the things that comfort me and that make me feel secure. That's part of being a human being. But there is a point at which a person understands that this passing security, this passing sense of belonging, that all of these things belong to an order of time that runs out. And I knew that in an early day, in an early age. And then I had great fortunate because my life went the way that it did, Stephanie. I got to work with some authentically illumined human beings over those years where I, for instance, was told one day, look, Guy, it is wise to seek immortality because time defeats all other ambitions. I
mm,
mean, you don't have to be a genius to understand that. Of course, time defeats all other ambitions. My body is going to fall off of these bones soon, you know, and what good is all that I've got? People, oh, you're wonderful, you're this, you're that. You can keep all that. Let me have a
mm,
relationship with something that is timeless, that isn't afraid, and that keeps growing into new and new orders of self understanding and integration and ultimately completion. If I can do that, then I'm fulfilling the purpose of my life, and that's all
mm,
I'm interested in doing. And that's an inside out story, not an outside in story.
mm. Yeah, because really learning from the inside out is one of the probably the most richest way to live and to be in the world. And how does that look like when you feel that sense of isolation, perhaps like during COVID times, and you at the same time you are cultivating that inner relationship, but you're wondering how do you cultivate an outer relationship with the world again? Or do you think that the inner relationship will be enough to sustain you? And then it'll just be more of like a natural integration.
See, the question you pose is kind of like an either or question,
Mhm.
and it's not an either or question. I'll ask you a question. Your answer will give you the answer you've asked me for. If I'm a man or a woman who life brings this to my door, you know the saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right? Teacher knocks. I go, no, you're not the right teacher. Come back, change your clothes, look like somebody else, bring another lesson. I don't want that lesson. If I resist the moment where a revelation has come to give me insight into my own character, if I resist that revelation, Stephanie, can I grow? Or is the very fact that I'm resisting the revelation the same as saying, leave me alone, leave me as I am, I don't want to change? And you know the answer. You cannot resist a moment and learn from it. And if you can't learn from a moment, you can't be transformed by the lesson. And if you
Mhm.
can't be transformed by the lesson, what in the name of God are you doing on this planet? So for me, it just became evident going through life with a mindset, a reaction. It's mechanical. There's no question. It takes a long time to transcend it. But a mindset that says, oh no, not that. No, I don't want, no, 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 no. A mind that says no cannot grow, period. So when you understand that, you can hear no, but then your attention comes back and you want to learn, well, what in the name of God in me says it doesn't want to grow? It doesn't want to be integrated into a broader order of being. Then you have the right attention in the right place at the right time. And there you find out that everything you need to grow keeps being given to you. It's absolutely perfect. You are in a universe designed to help Stephanie transcend Stephanie and enter into a superior order of being. It's built that way.
Mm. So you're saying that everything we experience is actually to guide us and really remind ourselves who we are and to further awaken those parts of us that were
Yeah,
sleeping.
I'll say it this way. Nothing happens to you. Everything happens for you.
Mm, very
When
true.
you understand that, there's no more fear.
Mhm.
Fear is that happened to me. It's a threat. That happened to me. Something's being taken from me. That happened to me. Somebody is going to hurt me. Someone said something. They're disrespecting me. This insanity of identity politics today. Something happened to me. No, nothing happens to you. Everything happens for you so that you can learn the lesson in the revelation of this consciousness that remains hidden until something comes along, the teacher, and says, hey, Guy, take a look at this, man. You're so interested in making an impression that you've sacrificed your integrity. Well, why would you do
Mm,
that? You know what? I wouldn't. Thanks for pointing that out. Then you get to a very specific moment in your life where you're all the time grateful for the things that before you were trying to get rid of. Your life has changed from the inside out.
mm. And how do we remind ourselves to, stay true to who we are when there are moments of wanting to maybe concede for someone else or like those people pleasing moments? And how do you remind yourself that, oh, I want to be true to me in the moment?
We think this life is a mental life. We think it's an emotional life. It is a spiritual life that has in it a mental and emotional life. If you pick up a hot skillet, Stephanie, and you pick it up, do you need to go, I wonder what I should do with this hot skillet that's in my hand right now? Hmm. Should I? Well, I don't want to throw it because that would make me look like I was asleep. I don't want people to think I was asleep. On the other hand, I don't want to lose the food because that's pretty good stuff cooking there. Do you go through all that, or the minute you're burning your hand, does the intelligence of the body go, holy moly, Stephanie, put this thing down, right? How much more so is spiritual intelligence, Stephanie? I pick up a thought that says I have to compromise myself. There's conflict in that. This consciousness is in conflict. If I'm present enough, I can experience the conflict directly, and I don't have to ask myself, what do I do? I'm not going to hurt myself. No conscious human being will deliberately hurt himself or herself or anyone else for that matter. No human being that is awake can hurt another human being. They wouldn't do it. Why? Because they wouldn't hurt themselves. And it's impossible to hurt another human being without first having hurt yourself, period.
Very good point. And how do we remember or train ourselves to stay awake and conscious amongst people maybe that aren't always conscious, especially if you live in like a big city?
No, well, almost no one is, Stephanie. But why does your behavior have to determine mine?
Mm.
Am I not an individual? Did not God, the divine, create an absolute individual soul with individual characteristics come into this world and have very unique essence waiting to be developed so that we can fulfill the purpose of our existence? Why would any other human being's behavior towards me determine my behavior towards them? That's why Christ said, love thine enemies. I mean, that's the most unthinkable thing in our world today. Love my enemy. Are you kidding? I'm going to crush them. I'm going to form a political power group and make sure they get out of the way. I'm going to do all this because I don't want anybody interfering with what I believe is right. But I can't see in that moment I'm filled with negativity and hostility. And what could be more wrong than being a man or a woman identified with dark states and then blaming others for what I'm delivered into in my sleep state? See,
Mm.
everything begins here, Stephanie. Everything begins here. And the way that we start to understand that is, instead of, if you want, we pretty much know how litigious the world is today. Everybody blaming everyone and everything for their pain. Would you agree?
Yeah.
You're going to like this, Stephanie. I love this. And because I know we're friends already, I know you're going to like this. Do you know the real meaning of the word patience? It's going to knock you down.
I don't.
See, what we call today patience, we call it tolerance. And tolerance has nothing to do with patience. Tolerance is a secret form of superiority, not compassion. I'm better than
Mm.
you, so I'm going to tolerate you. Oh, please. Makes me want to gag. No, patience. The word patience means to suffer myself.
Wow.
Mm. So when you aren't what I need or want you to be or insist that you do, and suddenly I'm filled with negativity that I want to blame on you, if I recognize in that moment that what you are is an agent of the divine, you are helping me see something in my consciousness that without that relationship in this moment, I would never know. When I can understand that, now I get it. Now the time is not to blame you for my pain. Now is the time for me to be suffering quietly this consciousness that insists everyone and everything else is wrong for the conflict it lives with all the time. Then
Mm.
St. Paul said, in your patience possess you your soul. Then all these beautiful scriptural ideas come to life, and they're not mechanical religion anymore. Now they belong to something very germane in our heart, giving us insights, new knowledge to deal with these conditions that before were in charge of us.
Wow. It's sort of like when you see a reaction, it's really about not even about what you're seeing, it's about what's you're internalizing within. And
Yeah,
you
yes,
know.
that's it. Yes, it isn't what you see; it's the seer,
Mhm.
and the seer is this unconscious nature that only knows how to divide itself up immediately from what it doesn't want and what it does. That's all it knows. You and me. Imagine a world filled with 6.5 billion people, every last one of them convinced that if they can get everyone to like what they do, it'll be a good world. But if they don't, then I need to bury them. That's the world we're in. That's why there's war. That's why all of this violence, this hatred, all of this strange politic is because we don't know what to do with our own pain. And in
Mm.
the end, what we discover is it's not my own pain. It's our pain, Stephanie. Doesn't it hurt you when you look out and see this insanity over there in the Ukraine? Or you look at the poverty and children starving. You look at the insanity of a world trying to force its way to keep people free. You don't make freedom through force. That's insanity. And I hurt. You hurt. Everyone hurts. It's our hurt. It's our pain. And until we understand that it belongs to a consciousness that is asleep and that doesn't recognize what it's doing to itself when it blames someone else for the pain, it's going to remain in place. But by the grace of God, here and there, a few men and women start to wake up and have the opportunity of discovering that I can use all of this enmity, this anger, this hatred, all of this resentment. Every last bit of that can be turned, just like the philosopher's stone can turn that darkness into light, can turn that lead into gold, and we can be enriched from the inside out. And those kind of riches are immediately shared with everybody around us because now we're not hurting ourselves or anybody else anymore.
Mm. Yeah, so when we're healing from within, then everything will, sort of not be as conflicting in our lives because
Yes,
there's
yes.
nothing to go against if we are clearing what we're feeling.
If I knew I was hurting myself with my anger towards you or my brother, if I knew I was hurting myself when I revisit the past, when I look at somebody that was very cruel to me as a child, if I knew that I was hurting
Mm.
myself when I was doing that, would I do it? I won't set myself on fire. I won't hit myself with a hammer over the head. I won't deliberately stub my toe. Why in the name of God would I deliberately, but that's the point, is I don't know that it's deliberate. Why would I deliberately let myself be led into a relationship with thoughts and feelings that as I go along with them, I'm dropped off in a pit someplace? I wouldn't do it.
Mm. So once we learn how to be conscious of our feelings and our thoughts more, how do we use that and create more of what we want to see in the world? How do we, consciously create more joy or connection or community with others?
You know, Stephanie, I never think to myself, and I've been a spiritual, I guess you would call me a teacher, for over 45 years. I never have not had one thought in my life, how do I bring joy into the world? Not once. I've never
Mm.
thought to myself, how do I bring peace into the world? It's not my job to bring joy into the world. That's insanity. That's an egotist. That's manic, nuts. Let there be peace on earth. And how does that sentence end? And let it begin with me.
Mm.
Let me be the one who lays my life down, not me who demands under law you lay your life down. Let me be the one that doesn't sow the seed of discontent by complaining about my conditions. Let me use my conditions as a man to find out whether or not I can be comfortable wherever I am with whatever I've got because I'm in relationship with something higher. Let me be the one that does that. And if I am the one who will do that, I will pick up the cross, Christian, speaking in Christian terms. If I'll do that, I don't need anybody to do anything. All I need to do is to keep doing what I know is true and watch how it reflects in me and changes everyone around me. Because I don't have to tell them what to do. They can see, there's someone who's not like me. They're doing something other than what I'm doing. What is it that that person's doing? Then you can begin to show others, talk to others, help others see what you were given to see. I didn't open my own eyes. That's insanity. But something wants to open our eyes. Something wants to open Stephanie's eyes. You and I wouldn't be sitting here having this nice conversation unless Stephanie wanted to have her eyes open. I wouldn't be able to speak to you about these things unless I was trying to open my eyes even as I'm talking. So it's all good. I have a saying, all things good come to those for whom the good is all things. All things good come to those for whom the good is all things. Let me make my life not about trying to get rid of the bad, but let me get some inkling of what is good. What is good? Don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt others. What is good? Be as generous as you're able to be, but without compromising yourself so that someone thinks you're generous. All of these simple ideas begin to build inside of the human heart. I shouldn't say build, begin to awaken in the human heart conscience, something that cannot and will not hurt itself or anyone else.
That's beautiful. And when we learn how to really connect to something that's, spirit and really outside of ourselves and open ourselves up, then we will be our best selves for everyone else. And
what could be a better self than the part of us that knows there's no such thing as a separate self? Once I know that, it's done. Not in my mind, not in imagination, not in some super hypocritical religious fantasy, but to know from myself that you and I, even though you look like you look and I look like I look, behind this face, behind Stephanie's face, there is something that has always been together and always will be together, and that is intended to help itself discover the truth of itself. And as that grows in a human being, they become a different kind of person. You just can't hurt anybody anymore. You would literally rather die than hurt another human being. Imagine if the world was like that. There wouldn't be war, would there?
right, I know. Yeah, I think it's important because knowing stuff like that, it reminds us that, we wouldn't want to harm anybody because that's, we are all interconnected and
Yes.
share that consciousness.
Mm.
Yeah, so that's really powerful. And how can people really remember who they are and, you know, or is there like a practice, or do you like have a morning routine, or is it just like listening to conversations like ours that, could really
It's
benefit?
all of that. It's all of that, Stephanie. I mean, I speak 3 times a week online to men and women all over the world for nothing. So there's nothing to join. People share in these ideas. I nourish myself. If I have a meditation practice and I'm persistent, consistent, if I read, if I listen to an interview like this, it's almost impossible if I have anything in me that's real not to go, that's right. Now, how do I make that rightness into my personal understanding? That's the rub. Because at a certain point, a person has to recognize I've got all these right ideas, but I'm still doing mostly wrong stuff.
Mm,
So I'm going to have to find a way as this understanding increases that there is another order of life. I'm going to have to increasingly recognize where is it that I'm not choosing in favor of being present to that interior source because something in me is pulling me out to try to possess something to make me feel good. And at a certain point, I mean, I don't know how long it takes. It stuns me that I had to get to be 73 years old before I actually understood some things. But the bottom line is that once you understand something, that understanding can be built on and built on and built on. Because you and I, would you agree, we have acknowledged some truths together?
yes.
So now we have to act knowledge, not just acknowledge. I must act on the knowledge. I
Mm.
must see for myself if that's true. For instance, has fear ever released me from fear? And the answer is no, it hasn't. From time to time, I may be afraid of something. I go do it. I get the money. I get the job. I get the approval. And I think to myself, well, yeah, well, fear said, blah, blah, blah. And now I feel safe. But that safety is like the interval on a battlefield between shelling, because that fear is still there. And if I don't want to live with fear, I'm not going to. I mustn't learn to accept the abeyance, the temporary postponement of fear, the postponement of anger, because people all the time, they say, well, I'm a loving this and I love that, and love, 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 and then of course you don't want to get bit, but you would say to them, well, where's your love when somebody cuts you off, or you get an email, and it's gone. But when that happens, I don't see it's gone, because I see you as responsible for it being gone. So we want this integration, Stephanie, a
Mm.
consistency. If you were to ask me what's the one thing that is an aspirant to a life divine that I want more than anything else, it is consistency. It isn't working and writing and practicing and then going someplace and getting taken over by a pair of shoes. It isn't losing myself anywhere at all. It would be to never lose myself again. That would be my wish. To never lose the ability to be present enough to perceive directly what's going on outwardly and inwardly, so that the unity of the two worlds can produce a revelation and something that releases me from Guy. That's what I would wish for. And we have that in us. We just have to get in the place where it starts to develop enough that wherever I go, that's my first wish. That's my first work.
Mm. I love what you said, just really holding ourselves in this consistent way, and maybe even holding ourselves accountable, and discussing when we're not holding ourselves as high as we could. And
But not judging,
right.
but not judging ourselves. Because a lot of us say, I'm accountable, then I hate myself because I fell
Mm.
down. No, you must see that something in you wants to punish you for not being perfect the way it says you're supposed to be perfect. Then you get it. All judgment is secret egotism. You can't judge yourself or anyone else without egotism. Now I get it. So now I know a little bit more about judging myself. I'm not going to do it. But then something happens there. Well, if I don't judge myself, how am I going to change? Then you see, well, that's why I've never changed, because all I do is judge myself. So there's always this illusion that there's some perfect me, and then there's this stupid me, and one day perfect me is
Mm.
going to get rid of stupid me. There's no such thing as that. There's just a consciousness divided up into two. That's what we have to see. And when I can see the consciousness that's divided into two, then there is integration. There is the awareness of the consciousness, and that's the next kingdom for us, awareness of this consciousness.
Mm. So how do we become aware? Because when I hear that, I remind myself, oh, that means we have to just be more compassionate with ourselves, and not judge, but just be aware and conscious. Is that something that you would do, or?
See, if I try to be more compassionate with myself, then there's a self that thinks it knows what compassion is. We're not the creators of compassion. We're not the creators of love. We're not the creators of joy or happiness. We're not the creators of anything except for trouble. And we're not even the creator of that. I'll tell you a little quick story to help you understand what we're saying, because I know we have to wrap this up shortly here. This is a story. I don't know what book is. This is one of my very favorite stories, because it exemplifies a practice. It exemplifies a certain kind of awareness, and it exemplifies letting go. Here's a young girl. She's a nature photographer. She loves the great outdoors. She's somewhere in the Southwest, wandering through these beautiful sandstone caverns, taking pictures of how Mother Nature has done these extraordinary things and turned stone into art. And she's captured by all of that. And she's so captured that she doesn't notice that she walks into a kind of a ravine and doesn't notice the sign that says, danger, flash flood warning, don't go in here. She walks right past that, doesn't see it. Now there's a park ranger sitting about 5 miles away, scoping all over, and he sees this young girl walk into this canyon. And he can also see, what she can't, because she's down in the canyon, that there's a thunderstorm about 7, 8 miles out, and it's dumping water, and that water is headed straight where this girl is walking through that canyon. So he thinks, oh my God, she's dead. I got to get to her. So he jumps down off his tower, he gets in his Jeep, and he goes as fast as he can, honking the horn. And he gets to the cavern, to the valley, not where she is, just above it, just in time to see her turn a corner and see a flash flood, 15 feet tall, cactuses, rocks, coyotes, everything popping out. And he, oh my God, I'm too late. And he watches her, and he sees that she's saying something to herself. And he's thinking to himself, she's repeating the Lord's Prayer, or, who art in heaven, sorry, I messed up. But the next thing he knows, and this is a true story spiritually speaking, next thing he knows, that flash flood comes right at her and parts ways right at her feet. No water even gets on her shoes. It just goes rolling right by her. He can't believe his eyes. He goes down and gets around and gets there. He said, what, are you a magician of some kind? How could you, what was that all about? She said, no, I'm not a magician. She said, I truthfully, I fell asleep when I walked into that canyon. I didn't realize where I was and what was about to unfold. But when I did, I knew immediately what to say to the moment. He said, well, what? What did you say that made the water go by you? She said, all I said was, you go on without me. Translation, don't let me derive an identity out of this torrent of thoughts and feelings, out of the judgment of myself, out of the world that seems so out of whack. Let me be a human being who is able to see everything with clarity from the inside out. Then when I can see with clarity, I know what to contribute to and what not to contribute to. I know that the healing begins with me. And if I will heal myself, as Christ said, first, then I won't have to worry about healing the rest of the world because I'm not hurting it anymore. I'm not trying to be different than the world I'm in. I have made the interior difference myself, and I've paid the cost of it. Because when she says, you go on without me, that's like saying, I'm not going to say I to any one of these identities. I don't care how tempting, how powerful, how lonely, how angry that thought is. I will not say I to it. That's the impersonal witness. That's the true observer. That's what we're interested in, the impersonal love, the impersonal life. We have that. Everything serves us. Everything.
Mm. Wow, thank you for sharing that story. It's so profound and so many lessons that you shared, and I'm really grateful for your time. And where can we connect with you online after this?
I do, like I said, I'm online 3 times a week talking to men and women all over the world. And it's free. There's nothing to join. You go to guyfinley.org/free classes. Guy Finley, GUYFINLEY.org/free classes. And you'll be taken right to the page. You have to request to get the announcement, but once you do that, they just come to you. Again, nothing to join. And my name, Guy Finley, is ubiquitous on the web. Google me or just go to my website, guyfinley.org. You can spend 5 years there just going through the free material. So that's it. If you're interested, act on this knowledge that Stephanie and I just had a very nice time talking about.
Yes, thank you so much, Guy. And I want to acknowledge you for all of the, insight and wisdom you've shared to really connect to ourselves and really understand how we can actually exist and coexist so easily, really, if we just remember. So, yes, thank you for everything.
Yes, let us remember. I won't forget you.
Thank you. I won't forget you too.
Okay. All right.